Morning. Thank you all so much for coming this morning on a summer day. We are going to have some folks joining us by Zoom, I believe. So I didn't want to be too late getting started, but so appreciate so many people coming this morning. And I do want to give some special thanks to some MARTOC people, Michael Refshun, who helped me so much, Colleen, in absentia with Jennifer Polarosa, some other folks, of course, Abby, who's invaluable, and just lots of folks that really made this happen. So thank you all again for coming. This morning, we are going to start our study committee, and I wanted to bring Marta in on this discussion. This effort is being initiated by the Buckhead Council of Neighborhoods, so I do want to introduce Ann McKillips, who is arguably the spearhead of this effort, and John Dean, who is former partner with Troutman, who's joining us as well. And their goal and my goal out of all this is they are hoping to have some cameras that will determine if a car is too loud in the city of Atlanta. There have been reports, for example, that some patients in Piedmont Hospital, because of the drag racing in the city of Atlanta, has been so loud that those patients have not been able to sleep. So I think this is a very worthwhile endeavor. At the same time, MARTA has a goal. We're very excited. I'm going to be at the groundbreaking, isn't it, Kelly, next week, for the groundbreaking of the Summerhill BRT, which is a very exciting project. And to enforce those lanes, to make sure that those lanes are rapid transit, they want to have cameras in those lanes to make sure that if people are violating those lanes, that they can be caught and appropriately fined for getting in, possibly interrupting traffic. So I want this to be a success with the city of Atlanta. I do want to congratulate Mayor Dickens on voting in the Public Safety Training Center yesterday. And I especially want to thank the officers that are with us today for their service to the city of Atlanta. I really appreciate them, and none of this would be possible without their enforcement and help protecting all the citizens of Atlanta. So thank you all so much. And I will tell you that we're going to have several of these meetings. We don't have the date of the next one yet, but our tentative plan is to also meet with the House Public Safety Committee because the House Public Safety Committee is addressing the school camera enforcement issue. They had a bill that was supposed to pass this past session. Unfortunately, that bill was held up in the Senate. But we want to learn from the Public Safety Committee about the pitfalls that they have encountered in setting up those cameras and some things we can do to make our legislation better. We also are going to be meeting with some third parties, hopefully some different providers that could supply these cameras. And my hope is that we can eventually have, as they've had in Washington, D.C., and I've gotten some help from the National Council of State Legislatures. I'm hoping that we can have a demonstration project like they have had up there to prove these cameras and make sure that they are what we want, they're what the Buckhead Council Neighborhood wants, they are what MARTA wants, and they are, we have a vendor that we can work with and have some contract provisions that are both competitive and not disadvantageous to the state or to the city of Atlanta. So with that in mind, I think we'll get started. And see, yes, I think we're going to hear first from Chief Peak with the APD. Or is it, then Officer Seltzer, are you going to sub for him? Okay, great. Okay. Feedback, I'm sorry. Okay. John, thank you. Is that better? Okay, thank you so much. Good morning again. Thank you all so much for coming this morning. And I wanted you all to speak this morning kind of about, I know that automated cameras are not a new thing on the highways, but in terms of the surface streets, you know, what do you think the feasibility of having these cameras and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, good morning. First off, I'm Andrew Senzer, and to my left is Major Harper. To my right is Major Kelly Collier. I am the Field Operations Division Commander, so I'm in charge of all of the men and women that serve out of our main 6 precincts. I've got 28 years on with the city.
Fantastic.
Yeah, pretty familiar with daily operations and what's going on in the city. As far as the new technology is concerned, and its potential to have us be able to mitigate excessive vehicle noise. I mean, it's a very intriguing concept. I can tell you from in my previous assignment as the Zone 2 commander up in Buckhead that I feel that a lot of complaints on what would come in as street racing calls, but really were obnoxiously loud exhaust notes coming from vehicles. And that was a big quality of life problem for us. So I am interested in any technology that could be used in to help us handle that type of problem. I can tell you right now that the current law that's on the books related to any kind of vehicle exhaust is very subjective. I don't have the number of the law on the top of my head, but I can tell you that it's the language is doesn't refer to exceeding a certain decibel level. It's very subjective in that it says unreasonably loud exhaust. So there are inherent challenges in enforcing the current law. So before or shortly after we get that technology, if it's proven through demonstration that it's effective, we would need to have a law enacted to enable us to enforce that. That's right now it's practically impossible.
So you don't have any instruments, for example, for measuring noise now?
Yeah, we used to have decibel meters, really for static locations, clubs or residences, where we would be called to loud noises, and we'd be able to enforce city ordinances related to excessive noise in a neighborhood. But that was, but even that law has changed, where it's more of a time and distance parameter versus a decibel level.
We learned during the legislative session that the theft of catalytic converters has caused the noise to go up a lot on the ones that the cars, it's been removed from the car. Do you think that's a huge piece of this or a big piece of it, or do you know?
I just anecdotally speaking, I don't think that plays a huge factor in it. Certainly, we do see spikes in thefts of catalytic converters. And I mean, if you've all heard of a vehicle with the catalytic converter removed, you basically have an open exhaust system. So that creates a vehicle with an extremely loud exhaust. But typically that's not what we're getting called to.
Okay.
We're getting called to, other vehicles that are basically being driven by individuals who have a disregard for the quality of life of the neighbors and will, gun their vehicles when they're driving through certain neighborhoods. And many of these exhausts, by the way, are stock exhausts from the factory.
Wow.
I mean, people, you can have pay a couple $100,000 for a Maserati, and everybody wants the nice exhaust stone. So it's not just the Chargers and the Challengers, the Dodge products. We've got some well-to-do folks up in Buckhead that will tell me, yeah, I paid extra money for this nice exhaust. So it's
Wow.
the manufacturers have a lot to do with what we're seeing on the roads right now.
Thank you. Senator Gann, I believe, has a question.
One of the things that for me, if somebody steals your catalytic converter, you're required by law to put a new catalytic converter on. So that's not a noise issue for me. But one of them that is, when I look at, you're telling me that we need to pass a new law. Y'all only enforce the state law on that, or do y'all have a city ordinance? Because I'm kind of curious what y'all's regulations for the city of Atlanta would be versus, a general law across the state.
So we do have a noise ordinance for the city of Atlanta, but so if we have a club or a building, which is basically a static environment that's producing noise, and we send an officer in to investigate, that noise isn't going anywhere, right? So, it has to be within the noise has to be emitted during a certain time period, typically, at night when people are expected to have some peace and quiet. And then it has to be heard from a distance of, I think it's 300 feet at a certain time and then 100 feet at another time. But we can pace off and have the ability to track our location. So we have evidence of being able to hear this noise via, GPS and our body worn cameras, where we can provide evidence at that point. But if you can imagine how difficult that would be to have a moving vehicle and be able to track the same kind of data that we need to prosecute a case like that.
But on the house party or, somebody that's doing something in a static location, as you say, I get that. Do y'all have an ordinance for vehicles that, one of the things I learned in school was how to copy off other people's paper. So if y'all had an ordinance that worked well in the city, then we would start to work with our legislative council to get through. Okay, where do we need to go on a statewide?
I think the key to any ordinance or state law would be to have a decibel level that we would be able to measure with a device.
Just so you know, engineers learn how to copy off everybody else's paper, because we try not to reinvent the wheel.
Representative Oliver.
Thank you. Thank you, Officer Harper, for hosting us last week at a tour of the South River Forest site. It was very helpful. Thank you. Somebody this morning will explain to me the uneven or the complicated history of camera sites on speeding and other measures that were going forward. I know that they have come and gone in various cities. Did the city of Atlanta ever have a camera identification of a speeder?
Good morning. I'm Major Harper. I'm the commander of the Special Operations Section. I've been on the department for 25 years. Special Operations houses the majority of our traffic enforcement units, so we're familiar with a lot of things that are going on. So specifically for the camera enforcement for speeding, we use the red light camera for speeding enforcement. That's usually in the school zones. We're actually piloting a program right now through Special Operations where we do school zone enforcement. A lot of that information, we work with the city of South Fulton. They have a pretty robust program that they use in their school zone enforcement, and it has proven to be very effective. Just even the threat after a certain time period when they're in action, but no enforcement is done, it is shown to slow people down in the school zones. And when it deals with these loud pipes, I think one of the things is not necessarily the pipes that are, if it's a manufactured pipe that's on there, not aftermarket, it's the manner the vehicle is driven that kind of leads to the louder noise.
I assume this morning we'll get into these issues about these statutes. We had camera school zone was the bump in the road on the legislation this year, I think. So somebody will update me on that. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Representative Montaigne.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today and presenting on this bill and answering questions. I think when I think about the folks back home, obviously they have concerns with kind of the big brother aspect of these types of devices. I think we hear that constantly, everything from flight cameras to a number of different devices, whether it be in a school zone or speeding, red light camera. These have all been long running issues in not only this committee, but others. And we've heard that in the Motor Vehicles Committee, more than once for sure. I did have some questions about these loud noises, and something that I think, being in the Metro Atlanta media market, we hear about all the time is things like ATVs and off-road vehicles being in city streets. Obviously, as somebody who grew up, riding four-wheelers and out in Paulding County, they're loud, they're obnoxious. I can only imagine they are even more so in the city. Yet that would not address that issue here, right? That there is no tags on these ATVs. There is no tags on these off-road vehicles that are being driven. And seemingly there has been no real way or method to address this issue in the city. And so I'm afraid that we pass a law here today as a general law, much to the senator's point, and yet it's a half measure because we don't have a real substantive resolution to that issue. So I want to posit that for the committee. The second thing is I do have some concerns that a police department or sheriff's office, if we pass a general law, look, I have a El Camino with a Corvette motor, transmission, rear end, and a great exhaust on it. So here's my worry. You won't find me on Peachtree, street up here, with my El Camino. However, I do worry that if I'm on a rural highway or even on a city road somewhere in rural Georgia, that they're going to use this to somehow, bid a little revenue for the city. Okay, that's a concern that I have. I don't see this as being geographically limited to the city of Atlanta, much like a city ordinance would be. I'll leave those. Maybe you can answer those questions or give me some feedback on those, because those are my concerns right now.
Well, we don't create the laws, we enforce them. I understand your concerns as it relates to that. As Major Harper said, it's a lot of times it's the manner in which these vehicles are driven, the time frame and where they are, and that create the problem. So I don't know if I can answer your question. It was more of a statement than a question. We are crime fighters, and we also are called to protect the quality of life of the residents of the city of Atlanta. We will use the tools that are available to us, and those tools are in the form of a law. Then we're expected to enforce them. That's the job of the legislature to introduce the laws. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
so Chief Sensor, I guess I would ask, do you know approximately, are you still having ATVs come? I know they were really popular a couple of years ago. Is that still a big part of this?
That's a cyclical problem. As we get into the summer months, we do have groups that will get together, and whether it's fueled by social media, and they'll have a meetup spot and joyride through the city. It's extremely challenging for APD to catch these folks. We have pursuit policies in place that preclude us from chasing vehicles for certain types of crime. So we rely a lot on our other assets, our technology, our camera system, to kind of track where these vehicles are coming and going from, so we can do investigations on the back end, and also our air assets, so our officers can back off and safely respond to an area that's later identified by our air assets.
Thank you. Representative Hilton.
Oh, yeah, I can follow up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just wanted Uh, And thank you, Representative Hilton, for yielding. I had a question about, I think two things. I'll start here. So right now, I think a lot of that is on the books is unreasonably loud. What has been, in your opinion, the issue with that? That is pretty broad. So if you imagine as a legislator here, right, you're sitting on this side of things. I don't know that you could pass a law today that said you can't have a unreasonably loud exhaust, right? It would say a decibel level, because we are giving a lot of deference to law enforcement agencies to make those determinations on the roadside, which I think, in my opinion, would be the deference that a law enforcement agency would want in the first place. Right, that's a lot of deference. So tell me how that's a failure of the law for y'all to be able to make those tickets or charges against somebody. I see that as being more broad than what you're asking for.
Yeah, I mean, any law that provides that much leeway and subjectivity is problematic to enforcement. Just for instance, when we measure speed, we have, if we're on our patrol cars, we have calibrated speedometers, we have laser speed detectors and radar that we use that will give us the exact speed of a vehicle. So we know how many miles per hour that vehicle's exceeded the speed limit. We're able to write the appropriate charge. Currently, there's nothing on the books right now that enables us to do the same thing for sound.
Yes, if I may. So, and I would need the existing statute, and we've got time. This is something we're going to study. But if the existing statute falls under, I would guess a general provision violation somehow. Where has the holdup been happening? Is it a judge who's just throwing these cases out? Is it a DA or a solicitor who's not willing to prosecute? I understand that y'all have the deference, for the ticket. I don't understand how it's not being seen through.
Yeah, I'll defer to Major Harper again on this one.
Okay.
Yes, good morning. So one of the problems encountered really is once we do write the tickets, generally the people are asked just to produce something showing that they have no aftermarket pipes or anything added to their vehicle. And then it's left up to the judge to say, well, the vehicle was built this way as it was purchased. Then, how do I enforce this unreasonable standard to it? Because I could own the same vehicle as you and not make the same amount of noise, just depending on how heavily I accelerate at different times. So the subjectiveness, as Chief Senzer mentioned, is definitely a big factor in that. And that's why a lot of these are generally thrown out of court from what we've seen.
And these are municipal judges.
Yes.
Do you know if these judges are appointed by the council or they elected by the city?
Most of these will go through the city traffic court, so it's just the city appointed judges.
So these are appointed by the Atlanta City Council.
Yes.
Mayor.
The mayor. I'll leave it there.
Yes. And, if I could follow up, also one of the things that we've spoken pretty extensively with the State Patrol as well on this issue. One of the things we also try to avoid is, okay, am I to determine as a police officer on the side of the road, is this an aftermarket or factory built exhaust? So are we then expected to inspect vehicles or at every stop? And I think the reasonableness that Chief Senzer spoke of is, maybe time of day. Is there a distance? Is there a specific decibel that's listed? So there's a lot of different factors in there that haven't been mentioned. It's not specifically written in the current ordinances.
And Madam Chair, thank you again for the time. And I'm not trying to hold a meeting. I know we've all got other things to do. I just want to say, but I think that's the difference that we're giving you, right? I mean, we're giving you the ability to make that call on the side of the road without the inspection of the vehicle. We're saying, is it unreasonably loud? So if it's Christmas morning and, there's 14 ATVs with no exhaust running through, or vehicles or scat pack challengers or whatever rolling through your neighborhood, I would think that that's unreasonably loud for Christmas morning. Now, if it's 4th of July and everybody's, shooting off fireworks and there's a few people about 6:30 p.m. riding their motorcycles through the neighborhood, you should probably expect people to be out riding their motorcycles on July the 4th at 6:30, maybe. I don't know. But again, I think that's the difference that this body has given law enforcement agencies to make those calls. What I don't want to do is, and I think my opinion that's formulating now is we pass a general law that affects a lot more people than inside the city of Atlanta. And that could be, potentially a little bit more than we intend to chew off with the legislation as it's presented today. But thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Of course. Thank you for your questions. Representative Hilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Monahan, for yielding your mic to allow me to speak. First and foremost, I've got to thank the three of you here. Never has your profession been so difficult than I feel like it is now. So thank you to each of you for your service to our community. Yeah. I just want to pick up on a theme that I think we heard from Senator Ginn, Representative Monahan. This feels kind of like a local issue. Now it's impacting y'all. It's starting to impact us. I'm in Peachtree Corners out in the suburbs. We get the street racing and all that, and we hear it, and it wakes our kids up at whatever time. And this may be a question more for the residents than y'all, but does Atlanta have and again, building off Senator Ginn's question, does Atlanta have the ability to implement an ordinance to address this? Have they been approached? Has that been declined?
Of course, Sean. Yes.
I'm John Dean. I'm a resident of Peachtree Road, live between West Wesley and Peachtree Battle in a townhouse. Yes, we have gone to the city. I talked with Mary Norwood, who's a good friend of mine. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you come to the mic just for people that are online? No, that's okay. I should have directed you. Apologize.
Okay, so thank you for that question. It's an important one, and the response that I got when I spoke with Mary Norwood's office is the reason that I'm here today, and that is her assistant checked with the governor's office, and the governor's office takes the position that the state law, which in my judgment is unconstitutionally vague and probably unenforceable, preempts the cities and the localities from enacting their own legislation. Now, under the Constitution does give the localities the ability to enact their own legislation. I think that the governor's office's position is not correct. I think that it does not, the law as it currently stands does not preempt the localities from enacting their own legislation. And what we're asking for, at least from my standpoint, is simply for the state to clarify that the localities under the local rule of the Constitution allows the localities to enact their own ordinance affecting muffler noise, because we realize that one does not fit all. I mean, what's right for the city of Atlanta is certainly not right for the countryside. And the second issue is a matter of enforcement, and that is whether cameras can be used to enforce the law. I personally would like to submit a request to the Attorney General for clarification on both of those issues. One, whether localities do in fact have the right to make their own legislation, or whether they're preempted by the state law, and two, whether cameras can be used to enforce that. So thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Yeah, because I think, and you could hear this from us, that our struggle is, when we pass a law, it impacts 11 million people across Georgia. So yeah, my preference would be something as kind of what you mentioned. Hey, locals, if you want to do this, y'all go for it, because it seems very much like a local issue. Yeah.
And just as background also, until 2017, the city of Atlanta did have an ordinance that related to muffler noise. But for some reason in 2017, that was changed to the current law, which doesn't doesn't address muffler noise other than the kind of general provisions about no cutouts and so forth and so on. So.
Madam Chair, if I, one more, since I have you three gentlemen here, is noise the number one public safety issue in Buckhead? If not, what is?
It's probably one of three issues that impacts perceived quality of life of the residents. I'd say it's in the top three.
What are the other two?
Homelessness and people in our intersections selling items.
Thank you.
And
Be able to address some of the issues when I get a chance to speak about the technology and stuff like that, and the local jurisdictions and the local issues.
please join us at the mic.
My name is Ann McKillips, and I chair a statewide task force on this. And regarding the technical issues, I know more about decibel levels now than I ever thought I would know. There's dB, dBAs, dBCs, it varies. What happens is there's technology out there, and it's used in many, many jurisdictions and throughout Europe, that what it does is it takes a picture. If you have local jurisdiction, what I'd like to see is the state has a law that cameras can be used to issue tickets, which is the same thing MARTA would like. You cannot issue tickets in the state of Georgia except for designated areas, school zone, tollways, things like that. It cannot be used. And this was a change because of the red light camera fiasco that went in the state. But this would allow these technology, it's decibel noise cameras. And what they do is, as a car approaches the sensor, it measures the decibel level of that car. It takes a picture of the license plate, the date, the time, and the location, and it automatically will send a ticket to the owner. This prevents confrontation with our officers, which we know that can be a real problem. And with the staffing issues, it eliminates that issue. The thing is that the state does not allow these pictures of the license plate to issue the technology. What we would like to see is the state to authorize these noise detection cameras, or the cameras that MARTA would like to use, but allow the decibel levels to be set by every local jurisdiction. Whereas, like, and I'm going to use the example of Atlanta because, like John, I live in Buckhead. I live at the intersection of Georgia 400 and Lenox Road. And Major Sensor, having been in Zone 2, is very familiar with our phone calls. The issue is, what we would like is that the state allow this and allow each jurisdiction to make the option if they want to use these cameras. It should not be a mandate that they have to use this, because Manassas, Georgia may not want to use them. And I would think in the city of Atlanta, you would have a different decibel reading in Tuxedo Park as you would at the industrial area off Fulton Industrial. So each jurisdiction would be able to define the decibel levels in their different areas. That would prevent some of the issues. As far as the loud cars, hey, listen, I got 3 grandsons whose trucks will break the sound barrier, and my husband drives a Porsche. So I get that part of it. The issue is the quality of life. Do you know that there's a local church on Peachtree that they had to stop the wedding to wait until the cars passed so that the people could hear the wedding bells? In my condo, we cannot watch TV, have Zoom calls, or quality of life, much less have a child asleep, without the loud cars interfering. I actually had a book club meeting, and we had to stop our conversation to let the cars go by. Yes, it needs to be a local jurisdiction on the decibel levels. And I think the APD officers will certainly agree that there's areas of Fulton County and the city of Atlanta and Manassas, Georgia, and Valdosta and Savannah and et cetera that are not going to want to do these. Unquestionably, Atlanta may not want to do them everywhere, but they may want to do them in Buckhead. Midtown actually has a worse loud car noise because of the tall buildings. As far as the decibel readers, the radar guns have to be calibrated, and they can confirm this before they're used each time. The problem with the standalone is because you can't measure the sound until you compare the environment. The sound in Midtown will be much higher because of the tall buildings than it will be in Manassas. There is so much difference. You have to calibrate that decibel reader each time in the location and the environment. You cannot use the handheld decibel readers because they're not valid, and they will be contested in court and do it. The decibel camera noises are used in New York City, for an example. They're used in Knoxville, they're used in Miami, they're used in New Orleans, they're used, Utah's looking at them. There's a pilot going on in Southern California. Colorado has them. It's like we're behind the times. But I do think, in reference to your comments, was it has to be a local jurisdiction. It cannot be a statewide. The state just needs to legalize them. If the state makes them legal, then each jurisdiction can pick and choose if they want to. So I hope that answers some of your questions on that. I will tell you, the noise pollution is second to only air pollution impacting the health of the world's citizens, and it's a worldwide problem. In the US, there's over 5 million children between 12 and 19 that have documented hearing loss as a result of loud noise. I can give you stats from here to there. There are so many studies from the CDC, University of Texas, University of California, who own the effects of noise pollution and the impacts. It affects wildlife because birds can't hear their prey. They don't repollinate because they can't hear the noise. It affects so much. Of course, we're only concerned with human health here, but I cannot tell you, but absolutely it needs to be a local thing. It needs to be authorized by the state legislature for the cameras, which would also help MARTA in finding people that are avoiding the law. I can tell you the school cameras do work. My husband just paid a ticket for $250. Thanks, APD. So we're aware of that. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Like I say, I'm probably one of the best technical experts here.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate it. Representative Evans, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. Sort of doves into a little bit of what I wanted to say, just a little bit of background for the committee to address Representative Montahan's questions. MARTA obviously has a proposal that they've brought forward to this committee. But for the last 2 years, myself, Senator Halpern in the Senate, this last year, of course, Chairman, introduced legislation to attempt to allow the use of these noise detection cameras. It came to me, at least from a city council member, they wanted to put this technology in Georgia, but it is preempted by the state. So we would have to authorize it to be used. It doesn't mean that it has to be used. And from the beginning, it's always been, we want to authorize it, let people decide if they want to use it. But one of the main reasons that the city needs it, I believe, and other communities may need it as well, is when a car passes by that is violating a noise ordinance. And I do believe that the cities and localities have the ability to set those, but perhaps we need some clarification in the law. But nevertheless, whatever the law is, by the time someone calls to report someone and the police find them, how in the world are you ever going to prove the noise? The camera takes that snapshot in time. And that's why the city at least approached a few of us about it. So that's what I hope comes out of this. And then MARTA could use it. Whoever wants to use it could use it. And whoever doesn't want to use it doesn't have to. But I do think that this process, and this is purely a comment, so I appreciate the indulgence, is that perhaps we do need to, if it's the will of the body, to authorize the use of these cameras. But it sounds like we also need some clarification in the law that local governments have the ability to set their own noise ordinance. And the last thing I wanted to address was Representative Montahan's question about the municipal judges. They are appointed, but then they have to stand for election. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Dixon.
I just had a question for the two Atlanta residents, just the frequency of the noise ordinance issues that you're having, whether it's drag racing or street racing or whatnot. Just curious on the frequency.
Daily.
And in my case, in the stretch of Peachtree, if you know Peachtree Road between West Wesley and Peachtree Battle, well, the speed limit is 35. I finally got the Department of Transportation to put up some speed limit signs because there were no speed limit signs before Lenox and Piedmont Hospital. But nobody observes those speed limits. People tend, because it's a straight stretch of road, and there are times during the day, well, often, that people can go 60, 70, 80 miles an hour down through there, and they gun their cars. And it's not just Midtown, there are tall buildings. We're almost exclusively residential between West Wesley and Peachtree Battle, and it's high frequency.
Thank you so much.
Chief Harper, did you have a comment on the street racing, or is this abating at all? Or I know that y'all tried to stomp this out.
We make regular efforts. We do details on a pretty regular basis to do that. One of the issues we have with enforcement with speed racers is our pursuit policy, and our pursuit policy is strong as it stands. As much of a nuisance as it is daily, I don't think to put somebody's life in jeopardy by chasing somebody for a noise ordinance is appropriate. So we make every effort we can to combat this problem as we can safely.
Wow. Thank you. Right. Well, is there any more discussion on this? Another question? Representative Montan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I happen to be in the driver's education space. So I want to kind of talk to you about some of those things. When we see that people are changing lanes, I often tell people that changing lanes is probably the most dangerous thing you can do on the roadway. It's not speed. Speed is a contributing factor. Speed contributes to the death in an accident, right? It is what makes the collision so much more intense and deadly. I understand that y'all's pursuit policies don't allow you to follow these folks, right? So let's talk about noise. When we talk about noise, we say, I assume these folks aren't in like first gear, right? Because they're probably not even manuals. I don't know many folks who can even drive a manual anymore. So I assume these things are automatic transmissions, and they're hitting at about 3,500 RPMs to make this thing even loud at all, just right off the rip. So if I'm 3,500 RPMs, I'm accelerating pretty quick. Yet there is no pursuit policy. And we know that speed contributes to death. We've seen the crashes that are happening out here on the interstates. We've seen the stories that come on almost monthly about people getting hit by these cars. Just the death and the chaos. I don't think by allowing folks to run rampant around the city and not pursuing these folks that are the most egregious offenders, those that are going fast, they have the exhaust, they're trying to showboat without a care in the world. I don't think that that's going to contribute to the overall safety in the long term of your city. I think law and order is probably something that the city wants to obtain and achieve. Don't think you get there by letting the criminals go.
We're not in the business of letting criminals go, and specifically to your point with the high revving engines and all that stuff. So if we do that, usually it's going to produce a skid. So lane drags is on the book, and that's a very commonly written charge that we use on throughout the week or daily. So, and that's generally what it is. They like to refer to them as slide parties where they're doing the circles through there. So we've had enforcement in those types of situations. So then it becomes we're not letting anybody go, but we've had situations where officers have been surrounded. You go in with a group of officers, but there's 300 people out there watching this slide party, as they call it, shooting fireworks at officers and all that stuff. Then it becomes more of a different issue. So we don't let them go. But we have to use different tactics as far as getting them. So we have to do a warrant. We'll do a full investigation. So I see you, identify the tag, you get away. It doesn't rise to the level where I'm going to pursue you because there's no direct threat to me or any other person around there. And you got away, but then we begin to launch an investigation. So the unit that generally handles that falls under me as well. That's our hit and run section, and they do serious and fatal accidents as well as these type of incidents. So when the information is given to us, they'll pursue it, and we'll go to somebody's place of work, their home, and execute a warrant, impound the vehicle. That's one of the things that we spoke with the patrol, the state patrol, is once we do impound the vehicle, we're looking more for a graduated level of discipline for that. So the first time you may get a fine, your vehicle's impounded, but at some point we need to look at maybe suspending the license for the habitual violators. Some people don't care about the cost of getting their vehicle out of impound every week. So we do have some repeat offenders who are out there that we've addressed, that they just get their vehicle out of impound and that's it. And some other jurisdictions, specifically in California, they have a different levels that you go through. So your first offense may be a 30-day license suspension up to revocation of your driving privileges. When you see that, and then the fines for impounds, the state taking control of your vehicle, and they make a public where they crush people's cars in public just to show, hey, this is a habitual violator, and we're not going to tolerate it. So that would be helpful, I think, in legislation.
So out of those, Madam Chair, if I may, out of those investigations, do you have a rough percentage of how many in how many of those investigations or charges brought against a driver?
For the ones that we have, our investigative unit has a 97% solve rate on that now. And I can't give you exactly how many cases that is. It's, I'd say about 125 of those that have been presented. They have a 97% conviction rate on that.
Over what period of time?
Oh, that's for year to date.
Year to date, 125
Yes,
in the entire city of Atlanta.
in the city of Atlanta, yes. So I'm not saying there's not more offenders, but that's where we are. That's where we're sitting as far as our investigations.
Senator Davenport.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a comment. I just applaud the police for stopping these vehicular pursuits, for these chases. I had a bill to try to get some conformity to across the state where everybody would stop these pursuits for different things. A grandmother and her two grandchildren were killed right there. I think it was Cascade.
Yes, ma'am.
A few years ago, because they did not call off the pursuit. So if somebody's running out here, I'm not talking about hard criminals that come through and you need to stop them, but just for somebody stealing something and you kill 3 people, that's unacceptable. And we need to do something about that law. So that was my comment. It just spurred me when one of the representatives mentioned that. But I applaud the police officers for stopping these pursuits so innocent people will not lose their lives. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative, Senator again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Major said, I'm looking for my El Camino with a Corvette engine and rear end. If you find it, would you crush it for me? I think it's time we move on, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator again. All right. Well, Are there any other comments from APD? I know you'll have lots to do, but thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your input and certainly hope we can work together to solve this problem. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Without any further ado, I believe that we have a presentation from CEO Collie Greenwood from MARTA. So please come on up.
Thank you, Chair Silcox. And good morning, members of the committee. My name is Collie Greenwood, CEO of MARTA, and the presentation will be presented by our Assistant General Manager of External Affairs, Colleen Kiernan. But just before Colleen comes up, I just wanted to take a few moments to set some context here in terms of MARTA's role in this conversation. MARTA is happy to partner with APD on a regular basis. MARTA is proud of the use of technology in better serving our customers, whether that's from a service provision or from a law enforcement as it pertains to the communities that we serve. Last time we met, we were proud to tell you that from FY22 to FY23, we enjoyed a 17% reduction in Part 1 crimes. I stand here in front of you to say that since that time, we've enjoyed another 13% reduction year over year, year to date, with the removal, if you don't include the theft of Hyundais and Kias, which has been a recent phenomenon in our lots and across the city, across the state, and elsewhere in the country. But without that recognition, we have another 13% improvement, and that's largely to, of course, Chief Creers here, to the great police work that he and his team do, and it's also the use of the technology that they employ. So much so that they've purchased another 20 cameras, put on mobile trailers that we move around to the hotspots to try to target. It's data-driven crime fighting. So a lot of that, the car theft and things like that, when we get the data, we move our cameras to support our efforts in those locations. We also partner with APD and Georgia State University Police Department in monitoring our central precinct, so down at around 5 points, similar to a program that we have up around Lindbergh. So, we're no strangers to partnering with the police and using technology in these areas. We're also updating our CCTV cameras, the network, the infrastructure, so that it's better able to accommodate data analytics and that kind of equipment, so that we can participate in these types of efforts and work and share that information with police and other law enforcement agencies throughout the region. So these partnerships are important for us. They're important for the future of MARTA and how we work well with our partners in reducing crime and improving service throughout our jurisdictions. We even have partnered with APD in terms of ShotSpotter, which is new technology which triangulates on the sound of a gun and helps us identify the location that gun was fired. So again, this is new. It's a trial location, but MARTA's participating in that. Again, wherever we can assist, that's the context that I'm here to speak to you about today. And really, I'm really here to applaud Chair Silcox's efforts and thank her for her leadership in terms of the things that MARTA is going to need to do. If we are going to have bus rapid transit, then someone's got to enforce the rapid part of that equation. And we've been to other cities where they started off with a bus rapid transit system and they had a dedicated lane and it worked well when they cut the ribbon and for the first 3 or 4 weeks after that. But without sustained attention and a way to monitor and make this thing work, then that just becomes another lane to be congested and the system, the project suffers. So we really do need something to allow us to get cameras in place to support our efforts. We understand the noise issue, that's part of the reason MARTA is moving towards electric vehicles in the first place, like to get rid of the noise, the vibration. We believe in, we're users of the road and we're responsible to the people that live along those corridors. So we're trying to get our combustion systems such that we are better partners in the neighborhoods that we serve. And so we support the idea. And I'm going to ask Colleen to come up and talk to you a little bit about, BRT itself, the enabling legislation that might be helpful, the technology that we're looking at, and how we would actually deploy these cameras throughout our network. So without further ado, Colleen, if you could join us.
Great. Thank you, colleague. Good morning, Chair Silcox. Thanks so much for having us, members of the committee. Colleen Kieran, I'm the senior or the Assistant General Manager for External Affairs at MARTA. Also wanted to recognize our board chair, Thomas Worthy, who's joined us here today. Our police chief, of course, Scott Crayer is here today. Our chief legal counsel, Peter Andrews, is here today. And then my colleague, Michael Rafshoon, who's our government affairs manager, has really been day-to-day working on this project. So just I'll be super brief here, and I think you've all had a chance to flip through the presentation, but wanted to just make sure everybody's on the same page with what bus rapid transit is and understands our plans for deploying it in the near future. To talk a little bit about, I think there's some level of consensus that we shouldn't use police officer personal time to be out there writing tickets, so that like an automated enforcement mechanism is really needed. Talk a little bit about, we've been working with Legislative Council and vetting through GDOT and their legal department a draft legislation so that could be modified to incorporate some of the noise conversation that we had earlier, and then talk a little bit about just the timing that we're looking at. So just to start out, so bus rapid transit is a new form of transit that we don't yet have in the metro Atlanta region. It sort of has all of the benefits of rail service, but at the cost of more of a local bus, an express bus. So some of the attributes are, the main important attribute is that it has a dedicated lane. And so it allows the bus to move without getting stuck in traffic, in contrast to local bus service. There are other attributes, so transit signal priority. So instead of getting stuck at a stoplight, there's technology on the bus that can flip the light. So you have green lights for the bus. The bus rapid transit will run more frequently, every 10 minutes, rather than a local bus, which could run every 20 or 30 minutes. We'll also have bigger and nicer stations, which will have more room, real-time information, bike racks, and ability to buy and purchase your fare at the bus station, and then we'll have them separately branded. So we'll be announcing actually next week at our Summer Hill groundbreaking what the name for the BRT will be in Atlanta. So these are a few renderings for our first project, the Summer Hill BRT. So this is a view on Mitchell Street, the bus only lane. And then of course, in front of the Sloppy Floyd building is where one of the stops will be that will serve Georgia State Station as well as the Capitol. So you can, there will be a map of the whole route at the end, but you can see that there will be, clear pavement markings to designate the bus lane, but of course there's not a physical barrier to prevent a different vehicle from entering the lane. So what we're looking to, what we'd like state authorization to do is to use cameras for automatic enforcement of these lanes. And so the details of whether the cameras would be on the streets as part of that network or on the buses. We have cameras on all of the buses anyway. We would like to be able to automatically issue tickets for unauthorized use of the dedicated transit lane in order to make the service work well. So we know that it's an efficient use of law enforcement personnel. It's a deterrent. It's worked in other places. And there's sort of minimal barriers to deploying it. New York City has been using this. They did a long pilot and they've recently expanded their program. Those are just a few of the stats of the success. So it's working well. The buses are sped up. The service is better. People generally, once they get a ticket, don't get another one. And so we're not looking to generate revenue here, but we are looking just to make the service work well. And of course, the city of Atlanta, at least for this first project, is except for a very small segment of Memorial Drive, all of the right of way is city of Atlanta. So as I said, we've been working with Jenna Dold and we've been talking with GDOT and their legal folks to make sure that what we've drafted, which is included in your packets, will work for everybody. And so I think it's a good place to start to add on with some of the other conversation that we've had today. So essentially it changes Title 40 of OCGA to not authorize or allow for camera enforcement for the unauthorized use of a bus lane. And of course, emergency vehicles are allowed to use the bus lane. So if there's a fire truck or an ambulance that, is authorized under the law. So it permits local law enforcement to monitor and enforce those lanes, and it also authorizes a third-party vendor to do the ticketing, which is how it works currently with the parking contract with the city of Atlanta, is that a third-party vendor administers the program. And then GDOT would become the overall sort of authority by which a transit agency would seek to use the camera enforcement ability. And so that's, what this slide is about. So of course, the MARTA jurisdictions are Fulton, DeKalb, Clayton, and the city of Atlanta, but as our partners in further reaches, Gwinnett, Cobb, others are considering their transit future, we want to be able to allow, give them the authorization ultimately that they'll need if they're not a part of the MARTA family. So the penalties that we're looking at, so this would be all civil penalties. It would be a misdemeanor. The fines, as the legislation is drafted, would start at $75 and then increase for additional violations to 100, 150, and then continue on. And I believe that we've addressed the concern that we're aware of, that the violations travel with the owner and not the vehicle. So I think that's been addressed both in our draft as well as the legislation that was introduced and discussed this year related to the school bus enforcement. And so the due process, you can see on the right side of the slide, would be kind of a similar process for the camera enforcement that exists now, is that like the picture would be taken, it would be reviewed by law enforcement, it would be documented, and then the ticket would be sent to the violator. And then there would be the appeals process. And so like the ultimate place, no jail time, none of that, but like the Department of Revenue would be notified if violations have not been paid. And so ultimately they could decide to not renew a tag at the time of renewal. So as I said, our Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit project is going under construction as we speak. This is a map of the alignment. So we'll serve basically the Georgia Capitol downtown, so both Georgia State Station, 5 Point Station, and Garnett. And then we'll travel south on Hank Aaron Drive and Capitol Avenue and Hank Aaron Drive down to the Beltline South Side Trail at Carver High School. So we will be doing groundbreaking. You're all invited next week on Thursday, June 15th at 11 at the Summerhill parking lot, the northeast corner of Georgia Avenue and Hank Aaron Drive. But we do have, so we would be fine to do a pilot program, as Chair Silcox suggested, to kind of work out the kinks and make sure that the contract and the vendor and that we're happy with all of that. But we also just wanted to flag that we have additional projects in the pipeline that will be coming soon. So the Summerhill service is expected to start at the end of December of 2025. So time is of the essence. We'll need to be able, really need to have some resolution to this issue in the 2024 General Assembly so that we can do all the purchasing and everything will be ready for the beginning of revenue service in 2025. But right on its heels, we have the Campbellton Road Bus Rapid Transit, Clifton Corridor, North Avenue, far behind, but 2 projects in Clayton, both the South Lake BRT as well as State Route 54, and then Georgia 400 BRT will likely not need this due to the fact that the lanes will be enforced, will be tolled. And so really the only areas that we would need to be concerned about are the station areas. So, but we can put a pin in that. But we do want to make sure that people in driving through Metro Atlanta are aware of what the bus lanes are. We'll do a heavy public education effort as we begin this revenue service to explain how people should interact with the bus lanes. If you've ever been from Midtown over to Atlantic Station, there's this bus lane that is confusing and not enforced, not really needed. So I think it's really important for the service to work well, that we communicate clearly and have a strong enforcement mechanism ready when we begin the service in 2025. So with that, I will conclude, and our team is happy to.
I think you have a few questions.
Entertain.
Senator Ginn?
Thank you, Chairman. Colleen, I appreciate your comments. I am concerned. I'm one of those folks that live up 85 North. And when the hot lanes went in on I-85, they took away existing lanes and they They made hot lanes out of them. And we got a lot of folks that complained about that situation because, you know, you're taking existing paid for right away and you're using it for a special purpose. Now, in this case, I believe you started off your presentation saying that the buses would run every 10 minutes. So you're talking about a bus that's going to come down a lane once every 10 minutes, 6 times an hour. We're going to clear all of the traffic off of that lane. I think you're creating a disaster when it comes to vehicle traffic. You know, you've heard my comments before about how many people are riding a MARTA bus. They're just not on it. I guarantee you there's more people on this committee than there are on any MARTA bus that I can stop going by the Capitol for the next 3 hours. And for me, I'm really concerned what you're going to do to vehicle traffic in this area where you've got this going on. And I'd like for you to try to address that if you could.
Well, I appreciate your perspective, Senator. Again, thanks for sharing it. I mean, again, this is City of Atlanta right of way, and they have adopted legislation that designates this section of roadway for a bus lane because it's a priority. The City of Atlanta, it's a priority for MARTA, and you know, this is where transit is going in the future. So, and I think in other cities that we visited, it's not demonstrated to be the case. And you know, ultimately transit is a better way more efficient way to move more people. So it will help incentivize folks to ride the bus if they know that they can get there faster and more reliably.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next was Representative Montan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for your presentation to hear. First of all, I want to address all the information we got about the crime. Look, I think that's great. We want to continue to see that pattern. We want to continue to see that trend line. When I talk to people in Paulding County and folks I represent back home, you know, they tell me the number one concern that they have about riding MARTA to and from games or anything else is the safety, the cleanliness, which we've addressed in previous meetings before. We just want to continue to see that trend line, that 13% drop. I want one day I want to hear from my wife. I want to hear her say, hey, I'm going to ride MARTA into, you know, the Capitol one day. That's going to be the day that I think I'll turn a corner on that issue and just continue to do what you're doing. I don't, you know, the details there. We've talked about in the past, and we won't dive into those in this meeting, but it needs to be something that is the top, especially now that we've got FIFA coming. We've got major sporting events. People are going to want to ride that transit, and we want y'all to be an ambassador to our state when they get here. And so we appreciate the work that you've done there. On the other issue, I want, at the risk of sounding like Nostradamus here, yet another traffic camera type bill. So if I had a magic ball, I'm like day 40, sine die, and there's this monster bill that has all these, you know, traffic type cameras in there. You know, you're gonna have the school zone camera. They're all going to be germane to each other, and it's going to be the Clash of the Titans. So I will applaud your courage that you are very brave. If this bill doesn't work without those cameras, you know, you may want to reassess, because I know it has been the posture, I think, this legislative body for quite some time to not allow those types of changes. And so I would at least, as you're doing your research and looking at these bills, that you would do that. You had said in your presentation violations would be sent to DOR. My question would be one or many. If would you be able to renew with one? If somebody did not know, they went to register, would they be penalized there? Or is this many? Is there a certain number?
Yeah, that would only be after the 4th unpaid violation.
After the 4th, okay. And that was basically my question. I want to make sure that, you know, if somebody has one hanging out there somewhere, let them renew their vehicle. They got 4. I understand. It's reasonable. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Representative Monahan.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, I'm looking at your deployment plan. Where is, well, Fulton is in there. But where's DeKalb? Where's I-20? What's the plan for that?
So the projects on this list are funded projects. So we are currently advancing the planning for I-20 and DeKalb, and we're talking regularly with the commission about additional funding that is necessary to complete that project. So we look forward to adding that to the list as soon as that is resolved.
And I'm sure they've already told you that they paid into it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I guess just to sort of elaborate on that, as part of the 15th Amendment to our Rapid Transit Contract and Assistance Agreement, we did agree to do 4 expansion projects in DeKalb County with existing funding. So there are transit hubs at South DeKalb Mall, Stonecrest Mall, an arterial rapid transit project on Candler Road, as well as on Beaufort Highway. So we're advancing those sort of as we're having this larger funding conversation. And we'll deliver those with existing funding. Thanks for your comment.
Representative Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Colin, for the presentation. And thank you for CEO, Mr. Greenwood, for advancing this project. I was one of the first people to go on the mission to take a look at this. It's already in operation in Indianapolis. And here in our state, which is classified as a rural state, I hear a lot of complaints about, the traffic and this and that. But when you put your eyes on it and see it actually work, it's about connectivity to everybody in the city. And what happens is when you have this dedicated lane, it cuts down on the traffic. We have a labor problem in our state. People don't have people to supply the jobs. Most people want to work, but they don't have any transportation to get to and from these jobs. And they're not going to stay where they are. They can't get out. And so most of the people that look like me, Black and brown people, are put on the outside of the city. And so they have no connectivity. They want to do better. They want to live better. And so this just doesn't affect traffic by itself. It affects the lifespan of our state. And with, like you said, Representative Montan, with the games coming and all that, this will help that. People want to do better, but they don't have the access a lot of times to do better. And so this will help these people who, quote unquote, they say they don't want to work, help them get out to help our labor problem in our state. Because we have all the companies, we're the #1 state to do business, but we're not the #1 state to take care of people and their families. And so this will help. We have a problem in Clayton County. We have a homeless problem in our city, in our state. Clayton County has a homeless problem with our students. We have the highest rate of graduates that are homeless and that are homeless students in Clayton County. They have no way to get to school other than a school bus. And so this will help other barriers, not just traffic, to help us with connectivity throughout our whole state. And it will, we went to one in Indianapolis, we went to one part of town where it was a college. And the college, after 5 o'clock, the college is shut down and the nightlife began. People were jumping on it. We see no cars. People were jumping on and off this transit, going to different bars. Economic development is out the roof. If you own a business and you want people to come, but sometimes they can't get there. They can jump on this transit. The DUIs will come down because people are not driving at night. They're jumping in on off the transit. And I think it's phenomenal for connectivity because some people will be able to go to the other side of the state by jumping on and off that they wouldn't necessarily see. And when you open your mind and stretch your mind, it's impossible for it to go back to the present state that it was once in. Once you see something, you think you can achieve it. And that's what it's about. Everybody achieving something greater for their family and in life. So I thank you for this. I think it's excellent. I think if any of these guys on our panel had a chance to go out and really see it in action, there was a lot of naysayers when they opened it up also. But guess what? The economic development went out the roof as far as businesses. People had no excuses of filling those positions that they had on their jobs. So just give it a chance, people. I know the unknown is unknown until you actually see it, but give it a chance. It's going to make our state better. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. I appreciate that. I believe next was Representative Hilton.
Yeah, I think Senator Ginn raised a legitimate concern. As a driver, it'd be killing me to sit and see an empty lane and not be able to jump in it. Just looking for a solution. Technology, this may not be possible. I just know we've got these lanes now with the Peach Pass that I can hop in and pay for. Would that be something that, I don't know, would be feasible, something like this at all? It says, okay, we've got a BRT. If you want to jump in and use it, pay for it as you go. I don't know. I mean,
Well, that's certainly what we're talking about with Georgia 400, but I'll let
yeah.
colleague share his perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. So on that note, to Colleen's point, yeah, we are sharing where it's appropriate with the Georgia 400. It's kind of a built-in solution along with the highway design. Where there is one lane, then, if you, first of all, it's jurisdictional, right? So it depends on who owns the streets, City of Atlanta, GDOT, whatever jurisdiction is in charge there. But if it is a single lane and you have multiple vehicles in it, then the concept of BRT fails.
Yeah.
Right. If there are multiple lanes and then we get into some situation where we can, in fact, make use of the revenue from a sort of a Peach Pass sort of a situation, then that is something that we're investigating. There are a lot of reasons why it might not work, but there are a lot of good reasons why, if it does work, it would be to our advantage. And Chair Silcox has already raised the concept with us and asked us to take a closer look at that concept. So, we're not beyond those gates yet, but we are looking at it.
Okay.
And, I just to tack on to what Colleen said about the success of BRT, the concept that we are a growing community and that this city is one of the fastest growing cities in North America, the concept that people are coming from other states to live here, that we're growing as a developer of jobs and people, the concept that we're going to need connectivity, as was so eloquently put here. It means that if we do nothing, then the problem that we have today with the congestion on the current roads is only going to be further exacerbated. The BRT concept is, and I want people in their POVs to look over and see the bus streaming by, because I want people to one day say, you know what, let me give that a try. And when that succeeds, other major cities with the BRT and any mass transit system have proven that has it has a great effect on the service we're providing and connecting people to jobs and anywhere they want to go. B, it has a good effect on the existing traffic. I'm thinking about putting advertising on our buses that says this bus replaces 40 privately operated cars around you. You're welcome. So even if you never board the bus, you're going to benefit from a stronger BRT mass transit system in Atlanta.
Yeah, in BRT, in compared to fixed rail, is such a more cost-effective solution and offers so much more flexibility. I think that's the answer moving forward for sure. So, well, okay.
We'll take a MARTOC committee trip to lunch at Woods Chapel Barbecue when we're in service. You can see it for yourselves.
Next was Representative Oliver.
Representative Monahan represents a 50-year antipathy towards MARTA based on crime and not my neighborhood. And I know it's not him alone. I know that's shared. MARTA is used as a central element of the economic development arguments that Georgia economic development leaders make. And I'm curious to get over these hurdles of a 10-year debate about, at least 10 years, about cameras and the feelings that are also expressed here about those. Is the business community going to stand up for MARTA in relation to this particular issue? It's going to be a little bit of a tough step to take, because the business community uses MARTA for its economic development strength. And I don't need to tell y'all that it's a central element. State's contribution to the Bankhead station improvements is all based on economic development deals with Microsoft, et cetera. So is the business community going to help you, Mr. Chairman or Mr. CEO, get over these hurdles and this 50-year problem of folks in the rural area? I don't consider Paulding rural. Mr. Monahan may, but I don't. The suburbs are coming, and how is the business community going to help you on this issue?
Thank you for that question. That's a great perspective and one that we are in conversation with partners at the state level and the business community. So far, so good. You know, the conversation has been strong and supportive, but to your point, you know, it comes down to legislation. It comes down to public support. I feel confident that that support is there, but we are cautiously optimistic that we will not be disappointed.
I'll just add to that and sort of building on what Representative Douglas was saying with the connectivity to jobs. So Carter and Associates accelerated their redevelopment plans around Turner Field when this bus rapid transit was announced. So I think we'll have strong support from them, strong support for Georgia State. And I think, you know, focusing in on this particular project and getting it right, I think will make it easier as we go forward. So thanks for the question.
And Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the CEO, thank you for your point of clarity on how important the BRT will be. I appreciate it already. As a Southern girl, folks who move here, we probably started driving at 9 years old or something like that. So people who move here who have been used to a BRT or an L or subway, or I would greatly appreciate it. I see it happening already. There were 2 accidents on my way here. One car was in the tree. I saw a car in the tree a week ago. So people are learning how to drive when they move here. And the BRT would help me out so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
All right. Are there any other questions? Yes, Representative. Yes, of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, for just deposit this to the committee. I walked out of my door about 2 weeks ago and my neighbor's cow was in my front yard. So I do consider myself to be rural. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. One more. Senator Davenport.
Just a comment. I'm just so excited about this. And when I look on the deployment, it's all Clay. I represent portions of Clayton County and portions of DeKalb County. And when I saw Clayton County on here, I just went crazy. I'm just so appreciative because 40 years ago, we wanted to join. The citizens did, but a lot of people did not. And we didn't join at that time, but we finally did. And then the people in the cab, I didn't see the cab on here, but the people had been asking about it. I said, well, you know, Marta is going to do the right thing for DeKalb County. So you answer that. So you answered that question when Senator Anderson asked that. So I think it's a good thing. Those of us who are older kind of resist change, but I want you to know that we support this.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. All right. There any other questions? No? If not, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you so much.
I want to make a public comment.
Okay, of course, Ann.
Something that I think will address some of the issues. I'm sorry. To answer some of the questions, we are partnering with Georgia State University, Dr. Fay Lee. She's a professor in the, what do they call it? Urban Studies Institute of Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State. And she's taking on as a class project this fall, which will start in August and will be concluding the first week in December. So we will have the data to present to the legislature in next season. Some of the things they are going to track is what are the current sound levels being emitted today, and that is how does that relate to the hearing and human thing? The other thing they're going to do is they're going to analyze the 911 calls in more detail than is done today. How many of those vehicle noises were drag racing? How many were the donuts being made, what time, what day, the things like that, that we can document more than we have today. And the last thing that will really address some of the things in the other jurisdictions around is we are going to develop a survey that will be maintained permanently, or I shouldn't say permanently, for several years, so that each jurisdiction can log into the survey and see how many complaints and where they are coming from. We will do it by zip code and by computer login, whatever they call that. I'm not a computer person. But the data points. And so what we'll do is leave that up, and each jurisdiction will be able to pull the data for their area to see if they should do the noise cameras. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe there's not enough people complaining about it. So why would you do it if you don't have enough complaints? It will also tell you exactly where. The city of Atlanta, Statesboro has a huge problem because of the university students there. Savannah has a problem downtown. This will tell them exactly where and if they have a problem. That data will be available for the state legislature for the 2024 session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ann. Did we have another question? Representative Hilton.
Yeah, I just wanted to assure the residents of Buckhead on July 4th, I'll be headed down your stretch of Peachtree and I will be going less than 35 miles an hour. And I'll try to keep the noise down for you. So,
Well, and I thank everyone for their attendance today. Just a housekeeping thing. If you did not RSVP for the meeting, because more people attended than we anticipated, which is great, please let Shavana know so you can be reimbursed for your mileage and time today. So thank you so much.